So LA was kind of a lot of things happened in LA. Not, I don't say a lot of things, but the most activity happened in LA. So, as I mentioned, we got there about 20 minutes early, which on normal circumstances, great. Get there early, no problem. I was planning for a 6 hour layover. So I was like, okay. So even longer, cool. I had the wheelchair guy pick me up at the gate, no problem, sure. He took me basically as far as he was supposed to, which is basically at the junction of the terminal to the main airport. And then there was somebody else who's going to take me to my next terminal, which was, I was like, okay, that's strange, but whatever. Um, Now, one of the things is because I had such a long layover, a friend of mine actually who lives in California and not too far outside of LA, she was going to come up to see me because we haven't seen each other in almost a decade at this point, like 8 years or so. So and maybe now kept in touch and texting and calls and stuff like that. But like it's the first time we're going to see each other physically since she lived out in Pennsylvania with me. So the so the plan was for her to come up and we'll like hang out at the airport. Now, obviously, because she doesn't have a ticket, she couldn't come in the airport. Uh, and the fact that because I got there 20 minutes early, uh, she was ready when I landed, which was fine. So since she had to get there and everything like that, um, after I got dropped off at my terminal, I just kind of turned around and walked back uh, closer to the airport. And I was like, all right, well, at this point, I've been traveling for almost 12 hours, give or take, in total. So, like, I was getting hungry again because I only had eaten in Atlanta and that was 5 hours prior. Like, they gave you like little cookies and snacks, whatever, but like, it wasn't really enough to sustain you. So, I'm like, all right, well, there happened to be a restaurant right there in the terminal called Native, and I sat down to it's like a bar kind of place that you could serve alcohol. So I went over there and ordered a burger because that was the only thing that like really kind of sounded good with the beer. I was like, all right, cool. So we sat down, had that. Uh, by the way, obviously airport prices being inflated as they are, on top of being in California, a burger and a beer, $50. I was like, are you kidding me? Like that's ridiculous. But again, given the context, kind of makes sense. But I was like, ooh, that was I mean, wasn't a bad burger. It was pretty good. But I'm like, yeah, wouldn't do that again if I could. So, uh, but of course, being who I am, and given my druthers, I'm sitting down at the bar, and a I'm sitting at the end, and you know, it's almost like the unwritten like guy code of at the bar where obviously if they're strangers you give yourself like at least a one or two seat kind of buffer so that you're not like next to another person that you don't know. This is the urinal kind of attitude, as it were. So the same rule applies to bar seats. And so I walk up to the bar and I give myself the buffer from the guy who's next to me. And then it puts me at more or less the end of the bar towards the bend. And then there's another guy around the corner, basically the same thing. So we're sitting there at the bar. I'm eating my burger, and this older woman comes up and like asks if she can sit at the corner. I'm like, yeah, sure, go ahead, no problem. She was English, like, her accent was very present. So, but me, her, and the other guy on the corner kind of got to talking about like what are you doing here, like what's going on, where are you heading, and so she told me her story, and actually I heard a story from all three of us. Kind of told what we're doing. So the guy, he is actually from LA, flying to Vegas for his brother's bachelor party. So they left via uh, car. They were flying. They're driving out there like the day before, and he's like, "I got miles. I'm not gonna sit there and drive the 6 hours or whatever it was. I'm just gonna take a flight the next day, get there, and we'll be fine." So, and so that was kind of his path. The woman obviously came from London, or at least from Birmingham, where she said that her hometown was, but left out of London and came to LA because she's also going to Vegas. I think they were taking the same flight, which is kind of funny. And she was going to there because the um, her a friend of hers who is wheelchair bound. Uh, the doctors told him that he wouldn't live past 20. He's 60 now, and so every 10 years or so after 40, so starting at 40 and then 50 and now 60, basically he throws these big kind of shindigs. He's he's a lawyer, I believe she said, and that so he has money, basically. So he goes and basically rents out like a suite in Vegas, one of the casinos, and basically invites all his friends out just for like a weekend, a long weekend. They just have a good time. So this is her third time going, and she enjoys it. She has fun, but we're talking about the whole process, and it just kind of reminds me. I'm like, I can't help but talk to people. Like if they're present and they're interesting, like why not engage them in some kind of conversation? So yeah. So here I am in LA, three people, one local, one international, and one from the other side of the country, meet up at a bar in the LA airport, telling our stories. So I think we all kind of hung out for about maybe 30 minutes, and then both of them had to get to their flight, so they left. Then I walked away shortly after because at that point, my friend Charlene finally got to the airport, so we got a chance. Now, not only is that for me to see her, I had to leave the airport because I was like as I mentioned before, she couldn't come in. So uh, that was an interesting experience. Like the fact that like I had been traveling for more than half the day at this point. I was getting a little tired, getting a little cranky, and so trying to find out where to meet up, and I don't know the airport at all. So I'm like, I don't know where you want me to be. So we settled on arrivals because I figured I have to go back through it anyway just to get back into the airport. So eventually we do find each other, right? After a little kind of Marco Poloing through at the entrance. So we finally see each other, and basically just kind of sit on the sidewalk basically outside the airport and just kind of get caught up and talk about life and everything like that. So it was good to see her. I'm glad we got a chance to meet up because she was going to be my last friend that I will have seen physically from the U.S., at least for a while. So it was good. It was nice. It was a good time. So that was good. But now I had to go back into the airport. So we go in and I go up to the TSA and I'm like, hey, I got my ticket. I had wheelchair access, but like, can you just clearly you told me to walk up? Like, can you just let me in? And she's like, no, like you have to be in a wheelchair pushed by one of our pushers. I'm like, okay. So I sat there and I had to walk back down. So apparently the LA airport has like 3 stories tall, at least for the arrivals and everything are. So yeah, I was like, I don't know what. It was just a lot of escalator and elevator ride basically. So I had to take the elevator down the floor to the actual like deposit area where everybody comes in and gets their tickets and everything. I had to walk the entire distance to the other side of this entry area which was probably, you know, 300 feet, maybe, I don't know, maybe more than that. It was a long distance. I like walked through traffic and everything like that. I basically ended up following another pusher to the spot because she had the wheelchair, but she's going to pick up somebody else. I kind of followed her through. Get there, they get a wheelchair for me. I'm like, okay, now I'm sitting in there. Got my ticket. All right. So then a few minutes later, we get in. Get I have a woman, kind, kind young lady, push me through. So we go up and go way up. She pushes me through. We get through to the TSA. Finally, all right, we're good to go. Takes me back to the terminal. Well, one of the things is that because my headset, as I mentioned before, was disintegrating on my head as I was flying, and since I was going to be spending the next 15 hours with this thing, I decided it's not going to make it. Like, mechanically, still worked, heard everything, no problem. Like, the cushions on my ears were nice. Like, I appreciated them. They were very comfy. The headband was a little tight. Like, after a while, it would start to hurt, but like, it was my headset. I had it for a long time. I know it was fine, but it was disintegrating on my head. So I threw it away when I got to the airport because I'm like carrying this thing around. It's just going to be leaving marks all over me. Didn't need that. So before I got to the terminal, there happened to be an electronics store. I found the cheapest pair of wired headset that they had with the 355 millimeter jack, and actually, right here, ta-da! Because all the flights I've been on all needed this guy to plug in to listen. So I'm like, all right, give me something that I can use. So I buy that. Again, overpriced, but you know, better than nothing. Better than the little ear things. I couldn't do that for 15 hours. So then it's like, all right, well now it's about 8 o'clock on East Coast time, or I'm sorry, West Coast time. So it's 11 p.m. Now I have been traveling for like 12 hours at this point, and like, all right, so it's 8 p.m. Plane's supposed to leave at 10 actually. So I want to give myself plenty of time to do what I need to. So okay, cool. So I'm at the terminal. They have a little charging things next to the seats, so I plug in my phone, just kind of get a little boost. And I sit there to kind of message people, chat to my friends and everything like that, let them know where I am, what I'm doing. And then they go, oh yeah, the plane's delayed. Like, well, it's not delayed, it's here. We just can't get onto the terminal. I'm like, what does that mean? Well, apparently, the previous plane that had disembarked at that terminal, everybody left, and they left the plane there. Like, it wasn't going. The ground crew hadn't removed the plane from the terminal to be, boarded or whatever, and that wasn't the plane we were taking. So for about an hour and a half, a plane that was not being used was just sitting at the terminal, empty, waiting for somebody to take it away. Now, the thing is that our plane that we were going to be flying was currently waiting on the tarmac for the plane to be moved so it could disembark. So those poor people who were on the plane that we were going to be using were just sitting in the airplane waiting to even get to the terminal. They could see it, like, from their windows. They could see it, but they couldn't get out. So I'm like, that. It's like, okay. So the plane should have departed at 10:40, and it didn't actually leave until 12:40. And that was after they finally got the plane moved and got our plane in and got that disembarked. Then they had to go in and clean it and get ready for us and get restocked and everything like that. So finally, finally, at 12:40 Pacific time, we leave. 12:40 a.m. Saturday, technically, um, we leave. So at this point, we're now on the plane. So prior to when I first landed in LA, I I pulled up my Delta app and I looked at my ticket, and there's an option to check your seats. So I look at that. My original seat was in like the like row 6 or 7, but the way the plane is laid out is that because it's an international flight, so it's a much bigger plane. It's like 2, 4, 2, and that's like in the section that was in, there was maybe I want to say 6 or 7 rows of that, like in a grid. So I was second row, second seat in from the left, in the middle, and I had a choice of that one, or I could be in the last row, all the way to the right. It's an aisle seat. I'm changing my seat to the aisle seat because why the fuck not? And I figured maybe that might give me a little more leg room or do something. So made the change right there on the app. Showed up on as my new seat. So cool. So we go ahead and pre-board, get in there, no problem. Now, the funny thing is that where I was sitting, I had this nice, very sweet older woman sit next to me, and her daughter was with her. The two of them were traveling, but for whatever reason, they weren't next to one another. And I didn't realize this until after the plane had already boarded and gone off. But her daughter was like literally 2 seats over from me, and I was like, well, like, do you? I would have offered to swap, but there was the end seat, so between me and her daughter on the other side of the aisle was this other young woman who was traveling, and I'd seen her periodically, like in the lobby or in the terminal before we boarded, and I'm like, I just feel weird. It's a weird situation. I'm like, I'm not gonna present myself and like be like, oh well, you want to switch with me? It just felt like a weird situation. So I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. So we just kind of stayed as it were, but the older woman and I got to talking, and she's a sweetheart. So we kind of compared stories and talked a little bit about what was going on. The fact that like she's actually was traveling to Melbourne, but obviously coming from the U.S., you hit Sydney first, and then that's where they go. So, I ended up spending the next 15 hours, like just kind of hanging out with this lady. It was a good time. So, although in hindsight, I probably should have offered her the end seat because there was definitely a few times where, you know, she like she said it was the old woman bladder where she like had to get up every couple hours and use the bathroom. So I should have actually just given her that, but it also gave me an excuse to actually get up during the flight because what are you gonna do? I wasn't really doing a whole lot of moving anyway, so it was once you're airborne, the flight was fine. Like we flew through the night, so they gave us now in the section we were in. They gave us blankets, pillows, and a headset. But the thing is that the headset, while it looked like the one I just bought, the actual like audio jack was this 2-prong connector for the seat. And like, okay, well, it's literally only good here. So after everything's said and done, I'm like, it's a nice gift, but like I didn't use any. Oh, I used the headset. That part I did use because obviously I'm gonna do like listen to movies and you have like a little Spotify thing you can have them play music. Try using that to fall asleep. Sleeping was almost impossible on the flight, at least for long stretches of time. Because again, I need to have at least my feet up, but they crammed us like sardines into this flight, and while there was a little leg thing at the bottom, like it didn't lift up, and like my feet were still under the chair next in front of me, so I was not very comfortable, and it was difficult. So I would probably, if anything, I got maybe a series of 10, 15, 20 minute naps throughout the whole flight. Um, and then getting into Sydney, like that took, it felt like it took forever. Like the last 30 minutes was just like, just waiting. Like, all right, come on, we're here. We're good. Let's do this. Um, but they did serve us food on the plane, so we had a choice of like chicken or pasta. I chose the pasta. It was fine. Like it cooled again. It's airplane food, so it's not exactly gourmet, but it was fine. Like it got a little cold by the time it got to me, but it was fine. I ate everything. Um, and they did serve us breakfast, so I chose the yogurt option. Um, yeah, it was satisfactory. So we went ahead and landed, and then finally disembarked. But the thing is, because we were 2 hours behind when we left, which also means we were 2 hours behind when we landed, and the terminal that we were supposed to be landing at was being used. So they disembarked us at a different part of the airport. So we had to literally go down this series of stairs that was like as tall as the plane. So we had to do like the stairs, landing stairs to get on a bus. And the bus drove us around the airport to where I guess the ground entrance was. Got off of there, and then from there, I got to be able to push me up through, at least through, um, the immigration, but whatever the it wasn't customs yet because customs was the last step. But once I was in Sydney, got through a passport, everything, gave them that, and then the woman who was pushing me took me to baggage claim. So got through there, found my bags. Now the thing is that I'm well, all right. Next is in Sydney.